Today is Thursday, June 26, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Billy Hollowell. This week, federal immigration agents arrested 11 Iranians who were here illegally. That comes amid increased tensions after the U.S. bombed nuclear facilities in Iran. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Subscribe to the show, give us a rating, and send us your thoughts. Our email is quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. You can also head on over to cbn.com/quickstartpodcast. Joining me today is Trey Goins-Phillips. How you doing, Trey?
I am good. Happy to be here on this Thursday morning.
Yes, I am happy to be here too. We are one day away, technically, from the weekend, which is exciting.
It's Friday Junior.
It's Friday Junior. And okay, so the focus tease today, we've got obviously an interesting story coming with Rhett Walker. He is defending the Christian music industry amid the Michael Tait allegations. Give us a little tease for what's coming.
Yeah, so there's a lot of drama going on since the Michael Tait allegations, right? There are people who are not only targeting Tait, but they see a problem with the entire Christian music industry, and Tait has a response to that. So we'll get to some of those details here in a few minutes.
All right. And then on the main thing, I had a chance to speak with Johnnie Moore, the executive chairman of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, about his organization's attempts to help starving people in Gaza. He also has a lot to say about Hamas and what has been going on there in Gaza. Make sure you subscribe to all of our other CBN podcasts as well. We've got Newsmakers, Faith in Culture, hosted by Trey, Navigating Trump 2.0, and Heaven Meets Earth. Now for the news in 90. This week, federal immigration agents arrested 11 Iranians here illegally. One arrested in Alabama was an Iranian Army sniper. Another in Houston was carrying a loaded pistol. Counterterrorism expert Barak Seener of the Henry Jackson Society in London says Iran, defeated on the battlefield, may see a sleeper cell attack as the only way it can hurt the United States. He said the entire identity of Iran is as a terrorist state and that the reach is global. He talked about attempted proxy attacks in numerous countries around the world, including the UK and Sweden. The FBI says assets are fully engaged to prevent an attack, and Homeland Security is warning of a heightened threat environment. In other related news, President Donald Trump said the United States would once again strike Iran if the nation tries to rebuild its nuclear program. Trump made his statement during a NATO summit Wednesday in the Netherlands. While there's been some debate about how impacted Iran's nuclear ambitions were by the U.S. strikes, America has contended it might have set Iran back years in that effort. And when asked directly what he would do if Iran recalibrates that program, Trump held little back. He responded with one word: sure. Meaning, hey, would you potentially bomb them? He said, sure. So the situation, of course, remains delicate, and we are going to continue to cover it as it unfolds. And finally, Tyler Blevins, known as Ninja in the video game streaming world, is opening up about the journey of faith he and his wife Jess have been on. He has revealed that they have been going to church every week. He said, I'm trying to be a better person. He was responding to somebody who was accusing him of not taking enough breaks from video games when he said that. He did say that he goes and does step away from his computer quite often, and that he is trying to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. He said, quote, Jess and I are going through this journey where our relationship with God and Jesus, we're going to church every Sunday. Pretty interesting details there that he revealed. And we should, of course, be praying for that couple while they are on that journey. Trey, you covered that story there at the end. And obviously, we've talked a lot about Iran this week. That's important. But I do want to talk about this because seeing Tyler sort of come forward and share his faith in this way, it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has 19 million followers on Twitch. He is the, supreme video game streamer on the internet these days. So, and look, I'm not a big video game guy, so it's like, why would you sit and watch somebody play a video game for hours? But apparently there are a lot of people who really enjoy doing that. And of course, he's interacting with his fans. It's not just watching, right? He's talking to them and answering questions, and, they're going back and forth. So there's obviously some conversation there that people feel like they've developed relationships with him, and somebody of his caliber, of Tyler's status with the platform that he has, becoming a Christian, talking about his faith, encouraging people to explore Christianity. This is not the first time he's talked about it. He talked about it around Easter time also this year and said Jesus is Lord. And, he basically showed a really, short gospel presentation with people who were watching his Twitch stream at the time back in early spring. So, yeah, I think it's encouraging. Like, do I think that it's more important that somebody like Tyler become a Christian than anybody else because he's a celebrity? Absolutely not. But he does have a platform like all of us do. His platform just happens to be pretty big, and it's cool to think that he could be using that as a gospel tool.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. And of course, I want to get a quick comment from you on Iran, this idea that Trump essentially said he would strike again, potentially, if they were to rebuild their program. What did you make of that?
Well, look, I think that the Middle East has operated for years in chaos and unpredictability, and I think they've met their match in Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just as unpredictable as so many of the evil regimes over in the Middle East, chiefly, of course, in this situation being Iran. And I think what else is he supposed to say, right? I mean, if they were to rebuild, recalibrate the nuclear program, and look, we don't know to what extent it has been damaged by the US bunker buster bombs, right? There are several different analyses, some saying that it was maybe just cursory, it wasn't that deep, and then others saying it was pretty deep and very successful. Obviously, the White House and President Trump are pushing their ladder. They're saying that it completely obliterated the nuclear program. But if it didn't and we had to go back in, I can understand why he would say that. Now, what that would mean geopolitically, I have no idea. That could certainly reignite some hostilities for sure.
Yeah, at the same time, now that it's one thing to issue empty threats, right? I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. You keep moving that line. And I think the United States has done that a lot with Iran. This time they crossed the line, and guess what? We actually acted on what we said we were going to
Yeah.
do. That probably instills some fear, I would think, in Iran to think twice before doing something again, right? You would think. Now, I'm expecting people to normally rationalize, and I don't think we can expect the government there to do that. But you do see a different scenario here because there was actually action that was taken. And if he's saying he would do it again, we know he did it once. So that should, you would think, to some
Yeah.
degree, hold them back.
Well, I think I know we need to move on here in a second, but I think that there are two things happening with the Supreme Ayatollah in Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran. I think this is a holy war, right? This is jihad, and they're not afraid to do whatever it takes to win what they see as this quote unquote holy war. At the same time, they want to be respected on the world stage as a legitimate country, as a legitimate government. So I think they're trying to balance those two things. So I think you probably are right. Do they normally operate in chaos and not think logically? Absolutely. But also, are they maybe afraid and they don't necessarily want to get involved with the largest nuclear power in the world? Probably not. I think they're more likely to be respected if they just kind of sit down and shut up at this point.
Yeah, well, there you have it, Trey. We'll leave it there. We'll sit down and shut up. Now, these stories and others you can find, of course, over at cbnnews.com. That does bring us to our focus story. And Trey, this is another one you covered. Rhett Walker, popular singer, he is calling for a nuanced approach to the CCM criticisms that we've seen since the Michael Tait situation broke. What is he saying?
Yeah, so he really is just calling for more of a balanced approach. He's absolutely condemning everything that has been alleged against Michael Tait. He posted a lengthy story on his Instagram page, just saying, I wasn't going to speak out about the Michael Tait allegations. He said, it's none of my business. I don't know anything about it. He had never heard, he had never been a part of, I should say, any of these allegations, of course. But he said, with that aside, obviously Tait should be held accountable. But his issue, his gripe is, don't lump all people in the CCM industry together, in the contemporary Christian music industry together. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially, is what he's saying. So, in part, he wrote, my calling is my job. So, I do have to pay bills, and this is what pays my bills, talking about being an artist in the music industry. He said, I hope your calling is also your job. If a plumber has the same allegations and they're true, once again, send them to jail. But I don't cancel the plumbing industry. Sin has consequences. It feels weak to hate an industry because of bad people inside it. Stand up and call out the bad people. So essentially, he's saying there's still a lot of great people doing incredible gospel work within the CCM world. And to say that all of it is corrupt and all of it needs to be undone and completely upended, he said that's not really fair, because there are a lot of people who have a very mission focused, great commission focused attitude, and they want to see the gospel advanced, and they should not be condemned or rebuked or reprimanded because of the terrible sins of one person.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things going on here, right? You
Yeah.
have a situation where people who did know should be called out and called to account. And then there's also the assumptions of, well, everyone must have known, right? And I think that is, we don't know people's hearts and we don't know the truth. So I think it's okay to ask questions and want to know the truth. I think we have to be careful with how far we take the assumption that every single person in CCM knew these things, right? What was the specific thing that sparked, because I think Rhett Walker even said it in the post, and you just mentioned it, he wasn't going to speak out, but he chose to, and he chose to say quite a bit. What was it that sparked that specific decision?
Yeah, so presumably, I think probably the final nail in the coffin for him and for his decision to say something was Hayley Williams. She's the lead singer for the band Paramore, which is not a Christian group, but she spoke out boldly against not just the Newsboys and Michael Tait, but she condemned the entire contemporary Christian music world. She wrote in an Instagram story that she hopes it, quote, crumbles. We should note that she went on to say that a lot of the issues that arose for Michael Tait centered on the fact that the CCM world was not giving him, quote, affirming care for his same sex attraction. She said the Christian music industry is toxic. It needs to be LGBTQ affirming. So that's the vantage point that she's coming from, right? Her perspective is much more progressive as a secular artist speaking into the CCM industry. So you have to kind of take that for what it's worth. But I think that was probably what motivated Rhett to speak out. But something too, Billy, that's throwing a lot of fuel on this fire is Corey Asbury, another Christian worship artist. He's the guy who wrote Reckless Love, for people who might not be familiar with his name. He was asked on his Instagram story, you can post those like Ask Me Anything things on your Instagram story. Somebody asked him, did you know about the Michael Tait allegations? Do a lot of people know, or did a lot of people know about the Tait allegations before they became public knowledge? And he said everyone knew. And then somebody else asked, how many Christian bands or artists are living a double life like Michael Tait? And in response to that, he said a lot. So I think there are a lot of unanswered questions there that probably also factored into Rhett speaking out like he did, because now the question is, what does everybody knew mean, right? Did they know specifically these allegations, or did they just know that he struggled with same-sex attraction?
Yeah, I mean, those are those are obviously big questions, and when you put something out there like that, people are going to ask. And so we'll have to continue to kind of monitor this one, because I think we're going to see other people. My assumption is Rhett will not be the only person who speaks out. I think we'll see others say things as time goes on, because I think this situation's not done being covered, unfortunately, in terms of the scope and the size, and really even what comes next with the Michael Tait situation.
Yeah, and we should say that Rhett did respond to somebody who commented on his post and said that he's disappointed by everything that he's seen. This commenter said that he does believe that the CCM industry needs to be purged. And Rhett did respond and say he 100% agrees that those close to Tait, whether that's other band members, friends in the industry, record label, all of those people, he 100% agrees that they should be questioned. So he's not saying that there shouldn't be questions, that there shouldn't be investigations, that things shouldn't be looked into and assessed. But he's just saying, don't lump all of us in together, because there still is incredible gospel work happening. And I think that that's what Satan wants, right? Is for all of us to then, say, well, all Christian artists, everybody in the Christian music industry, all of them are just after fame and fortune. And that probably is true for some, right? But that's not necessarily true for everybody. And we shouldn't be, doing a disservice to the incredible gospel work that I think so many people are doing by suggesting that all of them are exactly the same, because that's just not the case.
100%. Very, very true. And so we'll continue to cover that story. And that brings us over to our main thing. And on today's main thing, Johnnie Moore, the executive chairman of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, he explains his belief that one of the biggest barriers to getting aid in Gaza is the current system, the current structure there of how aid is delivered. He also reveals the evil plan he believes Hamas has been using to try and prevent people from getting food and resources. Here is Johnnie Moore on today's main thing. Johnnie, you have taken the helm of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and we're going to get into the work that you're doing there. One of the big claims that we've seen among many critics of Israel is that Israel is somehow the biggest barrier to getting aid to the people of Gaza. What do you say to those who would posit that that's the case?
I think the biggest barrier to getting aid to Gaza is a corrupt old system that has enabled the continuation of this war, that's enabled Hamas to steal the aid, to sell it to the Gazan people, to hoard the aid for their own fighters, and in a type of exhaustion, with this process, and nobody tries anything different. I mean, which is what we're trying to do, actually. So we're trying to take a different approach, an approach that says it was a false choice, that some of the aid had to be used for nefarious purposes, that we can actually protect the aid, give it for free to people. And frankly, we haven't found Israel to be a barrier in that process at all. To our surprise, the biggest barrier to us has actually been the international system, the United Nations, the World Food Program, those types of organizations that have inexplicably chosen to boycott us, having never boycotted Hamas.
I was just going to say, it's interesting, having never boycotted Hamas, you often wonder, is the ideology the problem in some of these organizations? The refusal to place blame where blame should be, the refusal to say this was wrong, this was right. It seems like these international bodies, they either decline to do that, or at moments they side with the wrong party. And I don't want to leave the question too much, but do you think that actually then creates barriers with how things like aid are given out?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the way aid has been used in the Gaza Strip has only made a bad situation worse. And, the international aid community says they have to do it this way because they have to be impartial. But the exact opposite is happening. I mean, they're not being impartial at all. The way they're doing this is benefiting one party, and impartiality doesn't necessarily mean neutrality. Okay, you can see very clearly right and wrong, when something is working, when something isn't working. And our attempt at GHF is to take a system that everybody knows is broken. They all talked about it as broken. Nobody lied about it. Nobody said this wasn't happening. That all just, by the way, started in the last couple of weeks. They've all started saying this isn't happening. But we've all seen the videos. The aid trucks from the UN arriving the Gaza Strip, and 2 minutes later, you have armed, Hamas terrorists or bandits sitting on top of them, stealing the aid. I mean, this cannot be the way this happens. And yet the international community, they don't care. Well, what we're doing is we're saying you actually can do this differently. You can give aid on scale without being diverted, without prolonging a conflict. It can be free. Our aid boxes have more in the daily caloric counts for a daily meal than the UN aid boxes. We could do it right, do it well, and do it successfully. And this should be celebrated by the world. For some reason, it isn't. But one of the reasons why it isn't, Billy, is there's a very, very concerted disinformation campaign originating with Hamas itself, trying to block what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you look at Hamas and you wonder, any organization or group or political party that is running in an area or a country or a state, their goal should be the betterment of the people living under them. And again and again and again, we've seen reports of where things have been, you've had bomb shelters put under hospitals and schools. You've had these tunnels. You've had all this insanity that we've seen again and again. And I think for the normal person, especially a Western mind, they say, what in the world is going on? Why would an organization behave that way? And I know this is a broad, big question, but with all the experience you have there in the region and understanding Hamas, what in the world is it that drives them to behave in this way?
I mean, you kind of expect it of Hamas, right? I mean, this is a terrorist organization that doesn't dress as soldiers. They dress as civilians. They do everything as you said they were doing. What one doesn't expect is that the international community just goes along with this stuff. An international community that largely exists on the dole of the American taxpayer and the European taxpayer. So, it wasn't a surprise that they were hiding tunnels under hospitals, that they were stealing aid. Like, everybody knew this stuff was happening. No one was willing to do anything about it. And even, this disinformation campaign I was referencing, a moment ago, it exists for like two purposes. Hamas wants to scare Gazans from coming to get food at our distribution sites. So they're constantly spreading lies about like massacres and violence happening at our distribution sites and these sorts of things. Like, they want to keep people from coming. And then, by the way, they're also threatening our local workers, even threatening their lives to try to keep them from helping us. That's goal number one. They want to scare the Gazans themselves from getting food. And yet the Gazans keep coming by the thousands to get food from us. So that's failing, thank God. But the second thing they want to do is they just want us to shut down. And so, with a lot of help from a lot of the press, they keep defaming us and attacking us and accusing us of all kinds of insane false things. They just want us to shut down. But we're not going to shut down. Our mission is really, really simple. We just have to feed the people of Gaza.
How are you differentiating? How are you doing things differently than the international community is? Whatever you can share. I'm sure there are elements you don't want to share for specific reasons, but how are you taking a different approach that you have found? Because I know you've delivered millions of meals. You have found to be successful.
Yeah. The first thing is like how we approach the problem from the very beginning. We started from the bottom up. You might say from first principles. Okay. We had a problem to solve. The aid was being diverted on scale the moment it entered into the Gaza Strip. So how do we make sure that this aid is not used? That's it. And then we designed from the ground up to manage that process. So we created secure distribution centers. And those secure distribution centers are staffed by a combination of American contractors and of local Gazans. Those American contractors provide a sense of security, in the places designed in order to make it feel secure. The main thing these American contractors are doing, I saw it, yesterday. There was a little kid who got a cut on his head when people are hungry. There's a lot of crowding around the sites and people desperate to get something, which will calm down as we get more sites and as people get more food. This poor little kid got hit in the head. He's fine, thank God. But one of our security contractors is there providing basic first aid to the kid, making sure he's okay. So, and by the way, this is an incredibly experienced team. One of our key leaders spent 30 years in USAID. Another one spent a similar between 30 and 40 years in the U.S. Armed Forces. They've been to all the complex environments around the world. We just started from the ground up and said, these are the problems that need to be solved. How can we do it?
Really interesting conversation there with Johnnie Moore, and obviously a difficult story. There's a lot surrounding the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, some battling going on between the UN and some of the relief organizations. They're not being supportive of GHF, and they're not being supportive of Moore. And so we have more about that story you can read over at FaithWire and cbnnews.com. That leaves us time now for one last thing. Ephesians 5:8, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. Just that reminder that, when we go from darkness into light, it's a continued relationship with God. It's a continued move into becoming more like him, and we need to live in a way that reflects that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, once you become a Christian, you have a responsibility. And once you've told people, right, once you've made it public, you have a responsibility to shine a light that counteracts so much of the darkness of our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is the key. People are watching. And that is all the time we have for today. If you want a Christian perspective to the news, make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. And again, you can email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Don't forget to subscribe as well to the CBN Quick Start email newsletter. And Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll see you back here tomorrow.